We continue with the story of Yaakov and Rachel. We started yesterday, we spoke about the kiss, what was going on between them. And it's on still page 35, Sefer Ha-Aggadah. There's an interesting midrash here. Vayisa et kolo vayefk. After Yaakov kisses Rachel, the Torah says he raised his voice and he was crying. Lama bacha. Why was he crying? So, pshat of the pasuk. You look at the encounter. Why was he crying? He's emotional. He ran away from his family. He left, he got into this entanglement by deceiving his father, trying not to upset his mother. Now everybody's sort of upset with him. His father, his brother, his mother is concerned about him. He ran away. He's now in a foreign land. And he sees his cousin, Rachel, who for him, she's a sign of here, there's family, there's a home for me, there's connection. Of course he's going to cry. It's natural. But we want to dig deeper into that. The Midrash says, Lama bacha, Amar, Eliezer, בשעה שהלך להביא את רבקה, מה כתוב בו? ויקח העבד 10 גמלים, ואני לא נזם אחד ולא צמיד אחד. Yaakov was thinking, when Eliezer went to pick up Rivka, which, by the way, that in itself is a Midrash, because the Torah never says Eliezer. Torah says the servant. Torah never names him. So anyway, the servant, it says, Vayikach Haved 10 gemalim, he took 10 camels packed with jewelry and gifts and all that. Va'ani lo nezem echad v'lo tzamid echad, but I don't have even a ring or a bracelet to give her. So he feels that he came empty-handed. Davar acher, that's interesting. So davar acher lama bacha, that's more interesting. Davar acher lama bacha, why was he crying? Shera'a ha'anashim melachashim elu la'elu מפני שנשקה, מה בא זה לחדש לנו דבר ערווה? This is a midrash that is much, much later to rabbinic times, already after the whole idea of distancing oneself from even his relatives, not kissing between cousins and nephews, etc. So this midrash comes already after that and says that the people who saw him kissing Rachel were saying, what is he doing? Is he introducing promiscuity, devar erva, sexual immoral behavior? שמשעה שלקה העולם בדור המבול עמדו אומות העולם וגדרו עצמן מן הערווה. That after the flood, the nations decided to create fences to distance themselves from promiscuity, from sexual misconduct. זהו שאומרים שאנשי מזרח גדורים מן הערווה. And this is what we say, that in Babylonia they are more modest. This is a very strange statement, because anyone who knows the history from the flood on, in the Tanakh itself, promiscuity was prevalent. It was all over. In Tanakh we have prostitution, adultery, whatnot. And definitely not the Mizrach. The Mizrach is Bavel, was not much better than Eretz Israel, but it seems like this is already written under Muslim influence, and there are still people today in the Orthodox world that admire what they call the Muslim modesty. I had a man tell me, "Wow, look, it's amazing how the women dress so modestly and all that." So we should not really fall for that. That's
and they pray 5 times a day.
Yeah. So yeah. So, not to make it a discussion of Islam and its practices, but this is not the kind of modesty that is required or recommended. What it does, it only hides the personality of a woman and makes her insignificant, and let men take advantage of women, either personally, individually, or in the community. But like I said, this is a midrash that takes the pasuk out of context, that he's crying because they're criticizing him. When the pshat is very, very simple, he's crying because he's emotional. Then midrash goes on to describe a very, I would call a humorous situation that we studied it in school, to Rashi, and everybody loves that situation, even though we don't know that is what happened. It says, the Torah says that when Yaakov kissed Rachel and he told her that he's her cousin, Rachel, Yaakov and Rachel. Yeah. So Rachel ran back home and told her father that Yaakov is here. So he ran out, Vayarotz Lavan Achutza Laish, and he ran out to him and he kissed him and he hugged him and he said, come home. And then after a while, Lavan tells him, Hachi, you are my own blood and flesh and blood, and so you should not work for me for free. So this whole situation is weird. So the rabbis explain in this manner, which is maybe probable, that when Lavan heard of the visit, he said, okay, last time we had a visit from Canaan, the men came loaded. There was a lot of jewelry, a lot of, now that they saw a lot of it, like remember last time we spoke, he only gave them candies. He thought maybe this time they'd be more lucky. So he runs out to the men and he sees he stands there with nothing, because he had to flee to flee Canaan. So the Midrash says, "Vayhabek lo amar dinarim hem vehem b'chagorato." He said maybe he has this hollow. People used to carry, like today you have a money belt. It's not a new invention. We think it's an old invention. People used to put the coins in the belt and tie it around their waist. So he says he probably has it around his waist. So he hugs him, but he actually frisks him. He's looking for it. He's patting him down. See, right? Stop and frisk. See if he has any money. No money. Okay. So he kisses him. He wants to feel maybe he's hiding diamonds in his mouth. So like maybe there's a. But כיוון שלא ראה כלום, אמר לו יעקב, ויעקב saw his intention. He says, מה אתה סבור? ממון באתי טעון. You think I came with money? לא באתי טעון אלא דברים. I only have words. I have nothing with me. ויאמר לו לבן, אח עצמי ובשרי אתה. So okay, no, you're my relative, of course. I have to take care of you. And he takes him home. And then after a while, it says, אחי אחי אתה ועבדתני חינם. After a month, he says, you're not my brother that I could make you work for free. Meaning, for Lavan, it was okay to have his brothers and his relatives work for free, but with Yaakov, he doesn't feel comfortable, so he says, Mama skurtecha. Tell me, how should I pay you? And as we see later, obviously, he had no intention of paying him directly. And we know what was the payment that Yaakov requested. Lavan shtei banot. Lavan had two daughters. Shema Gedola Leah, V'Shema Ketana Rachel. The older one was called Leah, and the younger one was called Rachel. But we will see later on that the Torah makes a shift, makes a slight change in the way it names the daughters. What are their status? When Yaakov, when before the wedding, they called Gdola and Ktana, the older and the younger. But after Lavan tricked Yaakov, as we know, and gave him Leah instead of Rachel, and Yaakov complains, what does Lavan say? Lo ya'aseh chen bimkomenu latet ha'tze'ira lifnei ha'bechira. In this place, we don't let the younger, not the younger, the tze'ira, marry before the firstborn, bechira. He doesn't use gedola ktana, tze'ira and bechira. So that obviously in the pshat of the pasuk, that is an immediate and direct reprimand to Yaakov for deceiving his father. Okay, so remember that we said that the narrative itself, the story itself, shows that Yaakov, what he did was not right and he should not have done that. Yaakov is now in the situation that he is being paid back in exactly the same token.
So the story is spread?
The story repeats. So what is it going to say? This is unheard of. It's never done for the firstborn to be bypassed by the second one. Lavan says, really? What did you just do to your father? Didn't you just do that? So he's like the used cars, dealer who sells a bad car and who buys a bad car from someone else, right? But what is he going to say? You tricked me? That's what you do all the time. So he has no argument. Now the big question is, how did Lavan pull it off? How do you switch a woman on her husband? And especially since it was not done within moments. It was after 7 years that Yaakov lived with Lavan. Because Lavan is the exchange rate was Yaakov offered it, right? You say, why would Yaakov say, שבע שנים ברחל בתך הקטנה. I will serve you 7 years in order to marry Rachel, because he knew what was the going rate for Lavan. He knew that he would not settle for less. So he went for that. And he said, Rachel bitcha aktana, your younger daughter, Rachel, so there will be no misunderstanding. And until today in Hebrew, this became a maxim, an idiom. When you want to say that people spoke and detailed the contract, right? Make no mistake, this is what I want to do. They say, Dibarti ito berachel bitcha aktana. Like I said, berachel bitcha aktana. Like, make no mistakes. So Yaakov is very, very cautious, and he says, I want to work 7 years, right? So how is it possible for Yaakov to live with Lavan for 7 years, to see Rachel day in, day out, right? And then at the wedding night, not know that he's being tricked? How is this possible? So we have an eye doctor here. So maybe you'll tell me if it's possible. The Talmud tells us what? Oh yeah, the Talmud says right now. So the Talmud says a story that is fantastic and unbelievable in a way that means that we cannot believe it. Not that it's incredible. The Talmud says it's a nice story. It's a very nice story. It's a very nice story, but it doesn't work. What is the story? The story is that Rachel, it works only if you add one more element. The story says that Rachel and Leah they knew that they're going to be deceived. Rachel and Yaakov. So they agreed on certain signals and like a code that they will exchange at the wedding night, so they will not be tricked. Like the spies who hand over a package on a bench in the park, and you come and sit and say, it's a nice weather today, it's going to rain tomorrow. Same thing. So the code phrase, or Hillary scratching at her nose to tell Lester Holt exactly what to ask. So, I'm updated. So this kind of signals. So, but at the last minute, Rachel felt bad for Leah, that she's going to be embarrassed. So she tells her, here, this is what we're going to do. She comes to the wedding all veiled. He doesn't see her. And then, but he's going to talk to her at night. Right? She can't keep her completely silent. And there are different, intonation, nuances in the voice. What is going to happen? So Rachel went and hid under the bed. And when Yaakov was talking to Leah, Rachel answered back. Several problems with that second part of the problem is that the beds in the time of the Bible were not beds that you could hide under. One. Second, any normal person who hears a voice, he knows whether it's the woman who's next to him or someone who's lying under the bed. Right? It's impossible.
So the quality of the mattresses they sell today.
It's not the same mattresses. Maybe the earpiece or the microphone was not good. Who knows?
Plus, he knew about throwing a voice.
Yeah,
right? Because
she was
call Yaakov.
Right.
Yourself.
Right.
So he knows about it.
Right. So midrashically, it's nice because she's he's being deceived by the voice, or she's a ventriloquist. She knows how to throw a voice. But I think the answer is much, much simpler. It's much simpler, and it's built into the text. Only it's not written directly about Rachel and Leah. We know that Yaakov and Esav were twins, right? And yet one of them is called older, younger, Tza'ir and Bechor. One is called the firstborn, just because he was born minutes before his brother. So it's very probable that Rachel and Leah were twins. Mm-hmm. They were twins, and they're called. Now it would be a perfect match, or a perfect mirror image of what Yaakov did. He, as a twin who was younger by 3 minutes, whatever, deceived his brother. His brother still is the firstborn. He is now going to be deceived by two twins, who one is older than the other by 3 minutes, right? But still, she is the firstborn. If they are twins and they're identical twins, they could come to the wedding. Leah could come to the wedding, walking tall, no veil, nothing. He could do the bedekin, which, by the way, has nothing to do with the word badak. Even though everything's bedekin, it means to see the kala, is from the word badak. No, it comes from the same word as in English, deck the halls, bedekin. like to cover, to decorate. So this is, anyway, so she comes in, and he looks at her, and it's Rachel. The only thing that he can't see clearly because of the night and the dim light is her eyes. The only thing that gave Rachel Leah away were her eyes. She had a problem with her eyes. Now, is it possible for identical twins to one of them later on in life get maybe hurt or something?
The interesting thing is it says Eineha Rachot.
Rakot.
Right? And there is some commentary which people make fun of. I think Rashi or even Ezra makes fun of this commentary. But he says an aleph is missing, and it should be arukot, that her eyes were long. Now, if her eyes were long, then she would walk around like this, squinting, because she would be very nearsighted, and that's why it says it looks like she was crying all the time.
Okay, interesting.
Squeezing.
Okay.
So yes, you could be identical twins, and one could be very nearsighted, and the other one would
so there you
not
go.
be.
Or there could be some kind of an eye problem that you cannot, that one's eyes are
she could have
cross-eyed or something like that. And then the problem with that is you see someone from afar, they look like normal, beautiful people, but when you come in and you look in their eyes and their eyes not looking straight at you, you're being thrown off. And Leah always had this reaction of people coming near her and oh my God, like or they feel uncomfortable talking to her. So that's why the Torah says, "Vahi baboker v'hinei Leah." Only at full daylight he was able to realize that she's Leah. That's what I think the Peshat is. That's my interpretation. Now I had the sort of corroborated by the Rabbi Dr. Rubin, so it's good we have that. But the Midrash says differently, right? That what happened was that Rachel and Leah, from the day they were brought up, they were told, Lavan has 2 daughters, Yitzhak has 2 sons. We'll give the older to the older and the younger to the younger. And Rachel was happy and Leah was crying because she didn't want to marry that wicked man, Esav, and that falls, within in line with what we said before, that the Midrash portrays Esav as a wicked man. Here it says, Aita shoelet mama Esav. She would ask people, do you know Esav, my future husband? Who is he? What is he like? And they say, Ish ra'u melastem et haberiot. He's a highway robber. Which was not true. It's not written in the Torah. So that's a midrashic interpretation. So all in all, it doesn't matter whether we go with the midrashic interpretation or with the pshat of the pasuk, how exactly they tricked Yaakov. The concept, the central concept is there. That we are going to, our actions are going to come back and haunt us. And this is what happened to Yaakov. He deceived his father. He felt bad about it. Of course, he regretted. He fled to Haran. But when he came there, he was reminded very painfully of what he did, because he was stuck in the same situation. He could not complain because he would be told, "This is what you did." So this is in the sense of teshuvah, right? It tells us this. It's very important and good to repent and to regret, but it's even better to think in advance and not get into situations from which eventually we have difficulty getting out. Okay, Baruch Adonai L'olam Amen.